is here to share with us 3 photos taken with one Lensbaby, and that one Lensbaby is the Soul 45. And welcome, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Where are you coming from?
I'm in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, which is like centrally located in Pennsylvania in the South.
What kind of photography do you find most rewarding?
I began taking pictures of my children, but recently they are less of subjects. I've migrated more to subjects that don't require necessarily cooperation. So I have been delving a little bit into macro or close up photography. I especially like viewing the world in a way that not everybody sees it or experiences it necessarily, but that when I look at something in a particular light or something very small or petals overlapping, that no one else probably has seen it this way before. So first observing it that way, then using the tools, the lenses, the optics, the Omni system, free lensing to give it an extra depth or magic or dream-like feel. Add a little emotion to it.
So, your kids were your main subjects for quite a while.
Right,
Now, not
right.
so much. That's
Correct.
pretty familiar.
Yes.
Now it's more of a focus on macro. You're using Lensbaby gear, you're free lensing, you're shooting macro. So you're looking to see something that just has never been seen before.
Yeah. That's exactly it. I
Right.
still get joy out of taking pictures of my children, which we'll see in a minute, but in a different sort of way than I used to photograph them.
I assume they appreciate that change.
Yeah, they for the most part do. Now it's always, hey, are you going to put that on Instagram? So they're double checking if the entire world's going to see this image or their friends are going to see it or if it's just going to be between us kind of thing.
Yeah, am I recognizable? Have I signed a model release? Pretty soon you're going to be talking to their attorney about what you can put
Exactly.
out, what you can't. Let's talk about your first. What was your first Lensbaby?
So my first Lensbaby was the original Composer Pro. I don't know if the original one, the Composer Pro with the Sweet 35 optic.
From there, you got the Soul. How'd you
Yes.
get into the rest of the system?
I took a macro class with Tiffany Kelly, who's also a Lensbaby ambassador. She opened my world to the Velvet 56. So for a long time, I just had those two. I was primarily using the Velvet 56 for my macro. And then I would use the Sweet 35 for more creative kind of movement. From there, I got one of the edge lenses. Then I needed more edge lenses. Then I got the Omni crystals. Then I got the Omni filter. So it just expanded from there. My story with the Soul 45, I went on a little photo walk. It was just a very small photo walk with also another Lensbaby ambassador, Caitlin Shadle. She's my actual literal next door neighbor, shares a fence next door neighbor, which is super cool because we can talk Lensbaby over the fence anytime we want to. Then another one of our friends who's a photographer, Nicole Albright, who is actually one of my students, we just walked around our little downtown. It was December. It was cold. It was near Christmas time. Kate had the Soul 45. She said, hey, Liz, do you want to try this? I don't know. I think maybe a lot of people get into Lensbaby that way. Just want to try it. So I didn't get it. I don't know what it was, but I felt like I couldn't focus it. But there was one image that I took during that photo walk that I was like, I think actually I need this lens. Part of my really wanting to get it was the challenge in it, was that like I didn't get it right away. I'm determined to get this. I'm going to make magic with it. With the Soul 2, I kept it still, locked in the center, didn't use the bokeh blades, just used it as it is. Then realized the opportunities through attaching the macro filters, putting the bokeh blades in different ways, tilting it to get your little tiny slice of focus over here. So that's my soul journey. I'm still on it. Honestly, it is one of my favorites now.
That's where
Yeah.
we're ending up today. So let's get talking about that. I will
Yeah, sure.
switch to that screen here. So this is your setup. You talked about the bokeh blades, the macro attachments. It has 46 millimeter filter threads on the front that allow you to put macro filters on.
Right.
And then the bokeh blades that slide into place, and you can rotate them to change orientation. Tell me about the subject matter that you photograph with this. Once you had found that, hey, I can tilt it or I can add all these things, how did that open up your perspective about this particular lens?
I started taking pictures with that lens just locked in the middle with just a landscape. So I could tell exactly where my focus point was. Since it has a fixed aperture, you take the lens cap off and turn on your camera. So I actually liked that, taking that step out of it, because it almost forces you to be creative in other ways. You can't be creative with the aperture because it is what it is. How else can you be creative with it? I really went to the macro element of it pretty quickly because that's where I was shooting at the time, really felt inspired by it. I have a local greenhouse that I like to go to when I need like a clearing of the head. In the greenhouse, it clears my headspace. Then I'm able to be creative in a quiet area. You can go there in the wintertime. The succulents in particular are sitting on these grates. I found that when you use the bokeh blades with the grates, it almost feels like a painting. That's how I expanded my creative view of the soul. Just took the soul on a beach vacation. I hadn't been in probably 5 years. I went to the North Carolina coast. I found myself putting the soul on every sunset I could get.
Wow.
I took a picture there of my son. He's walking on the beach. It appears as if he's alone because I was able to move the sweet spot way over to the edge, then let this ocean over here, the sky fade out into the blur. It allows you to tell some really rich stories that are poignant. You'll see in my pictures from that.
Let's get into your three
Sure.
photos.
Yeah.
Looking at this image, there's just a ton of mystery here. I don't even know what's going on. Am I catching a stop action? I feel drawn into this because there is mystery. And then there's a subtle thing going on with the bokeh in the background where it's got the horizontal aspect to it, low key, except straight right in the center. This just feels mysterious to me. Talk to me. What about this
Sure.
image is important to you?
You're going to find a theme with me that I use photography to help clear my head. This was one of those situations that I also needed my children to clear their heads as well. The way I do that is you typically to go into nature. So we have this meadow near my home. I said to the kids, we are not taking a hike. Don't worry, this is not going to be strenuous on you. I just want you to walk through the meadow, enjoy whatever you can. Train your mind to have a positive attitude about this. So they did. They started exploring because that's usually what happens when you get into nature. You start experiencing what's around you. So I was taking photographs of these seed pods, which is what you're seeing, the thing that he's letting go of. I turned around. We were walking we're making our way back to the car. This is my son's hand. I turned around. I saw him playing with these seed pods. He just let it go. It wasn't a scripted thing. I'm so glad that it speaks to you because it speaks to me. It speaks to me too.
Mhm.
Seeds in particular have that feeling of you can't grow unless you let go. This has that feeling of go flying and you will take root, grow somewhere else, but you have to take that step to let go. That's what this one means to me. It also it makes me feel a little bit about the freedom of childhood, that freedom to just explore, let your mind go. Yeah.
You talked about the bokeh. Tell me a little bit more about your choices there.
You can see that a little bit of the bokeh blades, you can see a little bit
Mhm.
of the lines in
Mhm.
there. Since this was a meadow, the sunlight was shining on these little bits of plants that were popping up. So I
Hmm.
knew that if when I turned around that the sunlight would be shining on them, giving them that. The Soul 45, you'll see in my other pictures too how yes, it gives like this painterly feel, but it also gives a sense of movement. The bokeh blades give that sense of texture, depth. They also mimic the shape of those seed pods. That's how I used it in that instance.
There is a dividing point here represented for me by the back of his hand. I love that there's a little separation from all the seed pods. Almost, this is what's happened, this is what's happening next. I'm letting go of these seeds. Like you said, you have to let go
Yeah.
to grow. It sounds like it has a lot of meaning to you.
Oh, it definitely does. Yeah.
If you were to shoot this again in this scene, in this field, what would
Mhm.
you be focusing on that maybe you didn't focus on this first walkthrough?
I almost feel like I would back up a little bit to give the sense that those seeds were flying. So maybe compose him in the seeds would maybe be in the top left or the even the bottom. They were flying up to give us a more negative space, I guess is what I'm saying. So backing up, adding more negative space to get the feeling of these are being released. By doing that, that also may add to what you viewed it as a sense of mystery. There might be more mystery if there were more space.
You would spread things out a little bit more,
Mhm.
not necessarily have everything concentrated in the center, and create some separation. All right, let's move to the next one.
Okay.
Okay, this feels otherworldly to me. Tell
Yeah.
me, why is this image important to you?
Okay, this is actually taken at Duke Gardens. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it is a beautiful place. I was going to Duke Gardens on this trip. My car had other ideas. It was breaking down as I was driving there. I had this tension, this unknown. Is my car going to get me home? Is it going to completely fail me when I turn it on, try to leave? But had this also this determination like, I'm getting to Duke Gardens. Like, I knew I needed to be there. This image was taken as I was walking back to the car. Again, I knew where the sunlight was. We in Pennsylvania do not have ornamental grasses that look like this. These are ornamental grasses. There's something about waving grasses. I've taken a zillion photographs of grasses. So I loved that the soul was with me because sometimes when you shoot with a soul into the light, you get into the sunlight, you get this echo of sunlight,
Mm-hmm.
which is in the bottom of this image. This one also gave me a sense of peace. This light shining through. This is going to be okay. There's so much beauty out there. Cars are just a thing. Things will
Wow.
keep growing and moving. So that was the history behind that one.
That is a very hopeful picture that you painted there, that you're able to, in a very stressful moment, come in center, say,
Yeah,
hey, this is what I'm here for. Let's
right.
enjoy this. Let's not worry
Exactly.
about whether I'm hitchhiking home. Let's be in the moment. Enjoy something that you don't normally see. I'm
Right.
looking at the
Yes.
colors in this, going, there's a hint of a earthly sky up there with some clouds,
Yes.
maybe a little bit of blue, but then everything else are these warm pinks, reds, a little bit of green in there, but it's an unusual color combination to go
Yeah.
along with an unusual treatment of the light, because the halos that are happening in those ornamental grasses,
Yeah.
along with what's happening with the focus, what are you feeling in terms of how you got this effect, or how the ornamental grasses created that effect?
I think with grasses in particular, I like to look for the layers. So I don't necessarily focus on what's right in front. I like to focus on something that's inside, maybe a little bit further through the image. I
Mm-hmm.
think that gives it more of a 3D effect. A flat image can develop into this rich thing when there are layers. So I definitely use the soul to with its aperture to be able to focus a little bit inside of those grasses so you feel almost like you're
Mm-hmm.
entering them but also like you're moving toward that light. There's a sense like using the focus to guide the eye toward the
Mhm.
light. Like you said, I just love how the soul's lens takes the light through the glass, through the grasses, bends it like that to add that almost swirl or halo effect.
You do feel
Okay.
like you're in the midst of it because there's obviously something, a little bit anyhow, in the foreground that's out of focus. And in the
Yeah.
background, there's no detail, and yet there feels like maybe there is. All right. Let me go to the third one here.
Yes.
Talk to me about what's important for you about this image.
Where I live in South Central Pennsylvania is relatively rural. So we have a local farmer who rotates a sunflower field. So there's a sunflower field in one place, and the next year, of
Hmm.
course, due to the what it does to the soil, they move it to another place, rotate it out. He does it purely for the enjoyment of people. It's become this huge thing in our community. He used to just plant them. Now he creates specific parking spaces, makes spaces for photographers in particular. Then they sell individual ones. The sunflower fields are an event in our community. You do have to drive a little bit to the outskirts to experience them, but they are an experience. I probably visit them every other day when they're in bloom because they are that powerful to me. Now, this particular location of where I took this is one of those I am determined because I know what this is going to look like when I get there. This is
Hmm.
off the beaten path.
Hmm.
Probably if you're not a determined photographer, you wouldn't be getting an image like this from this sunflower field because it dips down. But I knew where the high vantage point was. It's actually along a road, so I hiked myself there. I knew where the sun was going to set. Sometimes it's about visiting many times, knowing where to be at the right time. I use the bokeh blades pretty heavily in this one. You can see it already in the petals, in the parts of the sunflower that are in focus. And you can see a little bit of sun flare coming off. The bokeh blades help with that. In this case, I did focus on what was directly in front of me because I wanted the feel of that expanse, that the sunflower fields just go forever into the horizon. Again, you mentioned hope in my last image. This image also gives that sense of hope that there is light at the end of the day, that it will come again. That sunflowers in particular, you turn their heads toward the light, but it's an action. You have to take it. It's a choice to turn your head toward the light. So that's also what sunflowers remind me of.
The vantage point that you're getting is
Yeah.
unusual. The
Yeah.
gear you're using is unusual. You have all sorts of choices in terms of whether you use the bokeh blades, whether you don't. Your
Yeah.
choice to use them just completely engaged. It looks like in a vertical orientation here to
Right.
just sweep everything up toward the sun. Probably contribute to that flare in the upper left hand corner, which is
Right.
pretty magical.
Yeah.
That's all coming into place because these flowers, they're not short.
They're not short. No, they're
No.
not
So
round.
getting
Right.
this angle of view is an unusual angle of view to get
Hmm.
sunflowers. Did you hike
There's,
through the flowers to get there, or were there
yes.
paths?
No, there are no paths. It was walk along a country road that has no shoulder or walk the line through the sunflower. So I chose the line through the sunflower. So it also pays wear pants or tall socks so your legs don't get ripped
Yes.
off. Yeah,
They're
you
not
learn these
friendly.
things. Yeah.
Yes. So you said every couple days when these are in bloom, you're there.
Yep.
So this is a culmination of a lot of time spent
Hmm.
with this subject matter. It's not like you
Yes.
were driving by, jumped out of the car, and that was your
Nope.
one experience. If you were, it sounds like you will, to shoot this again, what might you do different or look for differently or shoot differently in this scene?
I'm not super thrilled about how bright the sun is in this. So I might even cut the sun off a little bit. Do you know what I'm talking about? So it's
Mm-hmm.
not the whole circle, but it's just like part of the circle. I think that would make it flare more. Getting it at, I would be more purposeful about what I did with that sun. Again, I might take this image The sun's pretty not much in the middle, but not really. But I might take this image with the sun way off to the side, way off to one corner, and tilt the soul so that the focus is way down in the other corner so that it gives that sense. But I definitely would still use the bokeh blades because I just love how they mimic the shape of the petals. Yeah, give that extra little flair.
I look forward to seeing those images. Sounds like they're
All
going to
right.
happen.
They are. It's probably another month. These will be blooming. So,
I'm jealous.
yeah,
That's great. What a great service that farmer is giving to the community there.
absolutely.
Liz, it is great to talk to you. I
Yeah,
love
you
hearing the
too.
vision behind these because it goes quite deep. So I've
Yeah.
got one more question for you.
Yes.
What's one thing that you've done or do on a regular basis that gets you out of a creative funk?
I choose one lens. I say, I'm not taking anything else out with me. It's this lens. It doesn't matter which one. It's like today, it's a Velvet 85. That's the only thing I'm shooting with. I'm not giving myself any other options. I will create with this by taking away the choices of having a plethora of options. It forces you to be creative with what's in front of you, with what you have. It's also that gratitude to be thankful for what you have.
It sounds like you've got a ton of options just with your
Yeah.
Lensbaby gear. What about just choosing one lens, going out and saying, this is what I'm committed to? I'm leaving a lot of those other choices at home. Do you think is magical or brings you back to your creative self?
I think it slows you down, makes you say, okay, what am I seeing? Without even raising the camera, what am I seeing? Then looking at what I have, I said the Velvet 85, so I'm just going to roll with that. Thinking, okay, so what are my options with this? Am I going to turn it all the way to get some macro? Am I going to open it all the way up and get this dreamy, hazy feel? Am I going to try to pull back, step back? A funk indicates that you're stuck in thinking in one way. By taking one lens, you have to think in a different way.
Hmm.
That's what spurs me on.
Liz, thank you so much for talking to me today. It's great to hear the story behind your images. You are bringing your whole self to this. Love to have some insight into that. Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you for having me.
You are
Yeah.
very welcome. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Thank